Hello and welcome to another Synergy session from the RPG Academy. I am Michael, and here at the RPG Academy, we game by the motto, if you're having fun, you're doing it right. So no matter what game you play, the system or edition, what rules you use, don't use, or misuse, as long as your table's having fun, you're playing the game correctly. So a Synergy session, if you're not aware, is where we take a pack of Magic the Gathering cards, which today is Shadows over Innistrad. We open up the pack, we walk through them one at a time, and we try to come up with an adventure outline, maybe even a campaign outline based on those cards. My guest today is Eric from Openly Gamer Theater, though you may know him better from his previous show that just recently ended, which is a terrible loss to the gaming community, Gamer Stable. But Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure. Anyone doesn't know that Eric and your Openly Gamer Theater is part of the RPG Academy Network. Woohoo. So for anyone who's not familiar with Openly Gamer Theater, what's the elevator pitch for what your show does?
We package productions, role-playing game, actual plays. We also do audio dramas that are based off of games that have been played or game settings, things like that.
Okay, and if someone has not heard of you before and they want to check out what's the one episode or one series that you think does the best job of showing what you guys do?
Well, the best and latest one that we've done is our Dragon Variation, which is a Shadowrun role-play drama, which is mostly audio drama mixed with some actual gameplay.
Okay, very, very cool. So anyone out there who loves Shadowrun or loves just well-produced audio dramas, that's a place for you to check out. All right, so let's get into today's Synergy session. I will open up this pack of cards and probably cut out all this because the audio is awful. So now, Eric, do you play Magic the Gathering? Are you familiar with it at all?
I used to play it a long time ago. As a matter of fact, my daughter just started picking it up just recently, so it's probably in my very near future.
Okay, this is sort of the same for me. I played right when Revised came out, so like in the 90s. I missed Alpha and Beta, and then I got in Revised. I played for several years in college, then I got completely out of it, sold all my cards, just was just done with it. And then Evan, who's part of the reason why the podcast exists, he also got me back into playing Magic. I don't play a whole lot. Mostly I will occasionally go to like a Friday night draft tournament because I think those are fun. And then I have a bunch of decks that I've made that are all proxied and like I have all the best cards and they're just photocopies. And I just play back and forth with the same people with it. Okay. So the first card in our pack is called Expose Evil. All right. So Expose Evil, it's a white card or a plains card. It's an instant. The mechanics are you can tap up to 2 target creatures. There's also Investigate, which again must be a mechanic in this set. Put a colorless clue artifact token onto the battlefield with 2, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card. And the flavor text is only the pure stand tall in the light. So the artwork looks like it's maybe inside some sort of cavern that's really open, or maybe on top of some sort of rocky outcropping. There's a figure that sort of looks like it's undead, and it's in a weird, almost like a Michael Jackson video pose. And there's this sort of white light that is either coming down from the sky onto it, or it almost looks like the white light is sort of coming up off of it, almost like vapor. All right, so for me, looking at Expose Evil, again, this is our first card. We don't have a lot of context to it. There's probably some sort of conspiracy. I think it may be doppelgangers or demons are infecting normal people. And there's this hidden danger that no one knows about yet, but will become a part of the adventure that we create, the PCs stumble upon. Are you seeing anything else in that card you want to bring out?
Yeah. Well, the light from above could be some sort of like the person who's doing this obviously has some sort of almost like a positive energy to them. Maybe this is some sort of if we're talking about a higher level campaign or adventure, this could either be the person who like sets everything in motion. Maybe they expose this evil plot, and now the player characters have to react to whatever happened in this event.
Okay. And looking at the art, it almost also looks almost like puppet strings, like that.
Oh.
Well, especially the figure that's in the foreground.
Mhm.
It almost looks like a marionette or a puppet with those strings. So I don't really have anything to add now, but that might, sort of a puppet master motif might come out as well. All right, we'll go ahead and move on. We'll see if we can get some context for what that actually might mean. All right, so our next card is Furtive Homunculus.
That is a weird looking creature.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, so Furtive Homunculus is a creature, looks like a blue creature, has the ability Sculpt. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. And the flavor text is, in terms of intelligence, homunculi are somewhere between humans and scabs. Clever enough to follow more complex orders, but dim enough not to question them. I like that. So to me, the figure looks like they're walking through some sort of ruins or maybe even an old graveyard. And it looks like they're carrying it has to be some sort of a graveyard because he looks almost like a grave digger to me. He's wearing a cream colored hooded cloak with looks like a bag and some body parts on the inside.
Yeah.
So like it looks like he's coming out of the graveyard, much like maybe an Igor or something like that, who's doing some darker person's bidding. Maybe doesn't look like if he's the Furtive Homunculus, then he's an agent of some bigger power.
Right. So now, how do you think this card can fit into what we've already established, or we can just build from it?
Building from the exposing the evil, maybe there is some sort of puppet master, like you were saying before, building these people out of old parts of other people.
Sure. So we got basically almost like a Frankenstein's monster situation. Because that first card, they looked very much like zombies. They looked like undead. So
Right.
we could be building, and that's one thing about playing with, or I figured out with these like themed decks. So I'm sure Shadows over Innistrad has a lot to do with like undead type of stuff. So it's going to probably come up again. But one of the things that looks to me just the eye, because there's like almost like a magnifying glass with one giant eye on this creature. It almost looks mournful to me, or innocent, I guess. And again, the flavor text, these are dim-witted creatures. They just do what they're told. They don't have any understanding of that they may be doing evil acts. I'd like to think that this might be a creature that the PCs, I'm sorry, could at some point in time befriend, and it becomes helpful because it's just sort of a dim-witted servant. It may give up information that a smarter agent would know to conceal, but because it doesn't know that's doing anything wrong, if it's questioned, it will just say, "Oh yeah, I've been digging up graves for the last 4 years. Master has been building these creatures in his lab and sending them, and just very open about what's going on because it doesn't know better, which could potentially lead to the master destroying it or attempting to, and then it could almost become an ally after that betrayal by its former master."
Right. Or maybe some sort of tragic motivator for the player characters, because
Oh yeah,
so that way they befriend it and they're using it to get information. The master finds out and either through it gets to the player characters, or as an example or some sort of consequence of it helping it, it pays the price.
okay. I do also like to think similar to like almost like a Hodor situation where it's a creature or a being that is already known to the players outside of this conspiracy. So maybe it's a servant of a rich noble who then turns out to be the master. Or if it's like a kingdom situation, it could be a serf or a jester, something that they would interact with before they even know about the conspiracy. And then they learn about it, because I think that's going to help them make a connection with that. They may even like that NPC before they even know what's going on, and then they learn that this person is being used to do these evil deeds because it's dim-witted and doesn't know that they're evil. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of them being known to the PCs before stuff starts happening.
Sure. Yeah. I also I like to use voices whenever I do things. So I can see this kind of a dim-witted kind of feel to him, you know. So that way you almost evoke that kind of um innocence
Mm-hmm.
in him. So that way you can really pull the rug out from under him later.
Yes. Or, and again, there's always the possibility that the dim-witted servant is the master in disguise and the ultimate betrayal revealed.
Right, right.
But we may be getting ahead of ourselves there. Awesome. All right. So our next card here is called Devilthorn Fox. So this is a plains card. It's a creature. It's basically a fox. There's no mechanics. It's a 3/1 creature, which means it has a pretty strong attack power, weak defense. The flavor text is on expeditions through Ashmouth. The hunters of Devilthorn Lodge rely on the cleverness of foxes to counteract the mischief of devils. So it kind of looks like it's like a dire wolf. Like it's definitely the image is definitely in the foreground, but it appears to be a very large creature. In the far background, there's a figure that I can't tell if it's on horseback or if it just the way its cloak looks. It almost looks like it's on a horse, or it may even be like a centaur. I can't tell, but it makes the fox look really large to me. And it sounds like from the flavor text that these are allies to these hunters. It's not a beast you kill. It's a beast that you would work with against these devils. You know, whenever you have just a creature, one of my first instincts is this could just be a combat. Just because, you know, when you play role-playing games, often combat is something that people like to do. So whenever you need, you know, kick down a door and orcs bust in type of a thing, is that they're out investigating and they have an encounter. This could even be maybe like the first thing that happens. So they're out, you know, unaware of what the plot is. They're just out ranging through the forest, through the plains, and there's a combat. And then there's something about this wolf. You say, well, there's something about this fox that they have to fight it because normally they're allies, but maybe this one is turned against them. They fight it, and then there's something about it. It's been corrupted in some way. Its flesh has been corrupted, like with necrotic energy. Maybe it's eaten something that was rotten or foul or necrotic, and then it's sort of twisted, almost like Cujo. Like I can't think of what's that actual disease that animals get and they go crazy.
Oh, rabies.
Rabies. Okay, so almost like it's like a vampiric or necrotic rabies. It's eaten something that has turned it feral, so they have to kill it or capture it. They could then track it back to what they found, and that could almost be like the inciting incident. Is like its body parts. Like why are these body parts that have been rotted for a few weeks laying out exposed in the plains, again, the forest, wherever. So that could be how the players initially get into the adventure with a quick combat, and then it leads to the discovery. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I like that. I think that building off of what we've talked about before, looking at the card, it looks kind of almost like a steppe or some sort of a wasteland or something like that. Could be that whatever is causing this disease is encroaching on maybe whatever settlement that the player characters are living in. Maybe these creatures are ingesting this taint or this corruption from whatever source is causing it. And if, you know, building from before, if you have somebody inside the town that's causing some sort of strange malady going on outside, or maybe coming from the town, you could have these creatures that are getting changed to become more feral and more desperate. Another thing that occurred to me is, so far we've got kind of this dark undertone of some mastermind who's doing some sort of experimentation with bodies and things like that. And if it maybe some failed experiments he dumped in the wilderness, and you know these creatures got to them, and so maybe the player characters, the incident is fighting this one of these creatures. They trail it back, and then they find all of these strange, like almost like misfit toys kind of things. You know, they go in, and then there's all these homunculi or these monsters that have been created. Maybe they've even formed their own little like pseudo society in there, and you know they're huddled together for protection.
Okay, yeah, I like that a lot. I don't think that would work for like the inciting incident, because there's too much chance of more information being given. But if you wanted to move that to like midpoint, then that probably could be a good revelatory scene where these creatures are able to start putting clues together that the PCs have already gathered. Maybe, maybe even the point to, yes, that guy there or that girl there, they're the ones that built us and we escaped and we were too insignificant to chase after. So now the PCs actually know who the main bad guy or who they think the main bad guy is.
Right.
So I think either one could work. It just depends on how you want to play the scene. Because for me personally, I think having the Misfit Toy things is an awesome idea. But I don't think that fits early in the game. I think that fits better later in the game.
Right.
All right. So our next card is the Loam Dryad.
Okay, so this is a green card. It's a creature. It's called the Dryad Horror. The action tap an untapped creature you control. Add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and the flavor text is, I've never known dryads to suffer visitors in their woods. Beware the Ulvenwald.
Yeah. I don't know.
Beware the Ulvenwald when she welcomes you. And the picture is very much like a primordial forest with knotted roots and very like dense canopy because there's very little light trickling through. And there's this hunched creature with glowing green eyes. She looks like she's clutching something, almost like a baby, perhaps. And she looks like she has these roots and vines growing out of her back. It evokes a real feel of like sinister menace because it really does look like she's clutching something either in protective manner or like she's caught with her hand in the cookie jar kind of feel,
Yeah, that sort of over the shoulder look at the camera or the audience does make for me to think of it as a her. I don't know why. It as like it's been caught doing something it shouldn't be caught doing.
Yeah. Just looking at the picture itself, just the contour of like the hindquarters, legs and arms, very feminine look. So yeah, I totally get that female feel. Plus it also kind of harkens back to a lot of your old folklore of, baby stealing witches, things like that.
Yeah.
And taking them into the woods, very Baba Yaga.
And even the mechanics, you tap a creature to add mana, which in the game means it's like a resource. I'm taking this energy from this and giving it to myself. So yeah, so stealing babies and stealing energy and vitality fits very well with that mechanic.
So fitting this into what we've already discussed, this we keep coming up with inciting incidents, and this very much could be either an inciting incident or a key incident, key element, maybe even a background. Something that has happened before, maybe a red herring plot line of maybe this village has dealt with something like this in the past, where there was some sort of a creature that maybe was stealing people, kidnapping people, or stealing some energy of some sort.
Okay, so again, the people who've listened to these now, we've done several for the YouTube channels. I've said before, I love creating imperfect or problems with imperfect solutions. So what if the Loam Dryad, or this creature of the forest who comes on a cycle like every 20 years or every 10 years or whatever, steals babies. It's this feared and hated thing. And so what if our main bad guy, or bad girl, I guess, is doing these evil things, but is doing it because they want to stop this from happening? So maybe they were like twins and their sibling was taken the last time this happened and they lost their brother or their sister. So even though they're doing vile things and they're creating zombies and these zombies are getting free and they're attacking people or whatever they end up doing, what if in their mind it's a justifiable plan to try to stop this true evil from the forest that they have a personal connection with?
Right. That's villain motivations is one of my big things too, and I think that's just from being a game master for so many years. It's you start to think in those terms. So yeah, I mean, because you don't want a two-dimensional villain, and if your villain has a reason, especially a justifiable reason in their own mind, I mean, to the villain, that's, I'm doing this. Sure, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, and yeah, some people are going to get hurt, but ultimately, I need to stop this thing from happening again.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think that would be a good way to go with that. All right, so our next card is Wicker Witch. It's an artifact creature scarecrow. The flavor text is when there were no more crows to scare, it focused its efforts elsewhere. And it is a creepy looking little sort of doll. Again, it's sort of a scarecrow. Doesn't either has like super tiny legs, or this is just like to the waist. It's wearing almost like an overshirt. It looks, I mean, it is an artifact, so it looks sort of metallic. It's underneath like a stair, maybe going to like a root cellar, and there's this sort of green mist floating up around it. Terrifying. And so maybe this card is combined with the last one, and the Wicker Witch is that evil force that, we got there from the Lone Dryad, but maybe the Wicker Witch, at least maybe that's what it's known by. The Wicker Witch comes every 6 years, every 3 years, whatever, every generation, steals children, and maybe there is a sort of a God, I can't think today. A tradition that has arisen where families will create these versions of the Wicker Witch as a way to ward off the spirit. Like they think that if they have their own Wicker Witch in their house or in their yard, then the true one won't come and take their children. But again, because things always go bad, maybe that's how the Wicker Witch sees. And some of these are truly agents of the Wicker Witch, and they can see through their eyes. Occasionally they become animated. In my mind, I see a scene where the PCs are surrounded by like dozens or hundreds of these Wicker Witches that are slowly just kind of closing in on the PCs, and they're having to fight through them all.
Right. Yeah, I think the term is nightmare fuel. So, yeah, that's that could be a very visceral moment where, especially because there's so many people are afraid of porcelain dolls and things like that because they're freaking creepy, and and things like this Wicker Witch. I mean, I love the idea that people create their own versions of these to keep the real one away, because I mean that's straight out of folklore, right? And you would have these creepy things in your house, and people are like, why would you keep something like that? Well, that's exactly why, because maybe the legend is, if a Wicker Witch or the Lone Witch or whatever you want to call it comes to your house and sees that there's already one there, maybe they're territorial, maybe they don't infringe on each other's territory, so they come in and go, oh, there's already one here, I have to go elsewhere. But going with the person who is like animating bodies or things like that, one of the things that I noticed about this monster, this artifact, is it has very human-like hands and teeth. So why would you make something like this with actual people parts? Maybe that's part of this whole putting people together, pieces of people together. Maybe this creature is the original creature is like this. Maybe they use it to this doll. They try and make it as lifelike as possible, but a warped sense. And also, just looking at the picture itself, it doesn't look like a baby doll. It looks more like a motherly, because she's very matronly shaped.
Yeah.
And I agree with the legs. Looks like, I don't necessarily think that maybe it's just a torso. I think they almost, because at the very bottom there, it almost looks like she has 3 toes.
Yeah.
So that could just be, just a part of how they put this together. But yeah, it's very much like a protective motherly figure that's gone the other direction.
Right. I started thinking in a very creepy factor, what if as like your baby teeth fall out.
Oh, nice.
That's the teeth are put into this thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Instead of a tooth fairy, you have the Wicker Witch who comes and takes your teeth
Yes.
because hers keeps falling out.
Oh, creepy.
And if not a good little boy or girl, the Wicker Witch will come and take them out before they come
Before,
out.
yes, yes, yes. Oh, that is terrifying.
that
Awesome.
that mixes people's fear of animated dolls and dentists.
Nice. So our next card is grotesque mutation. All right,
Okay.
Eric. Grotesque mutation. What are you seeing here?
Well, grotesque mutation's a black card. It's an instant, which, if I haven't played Magic in a while, means that it's something you can do onto some other target. Like in the text says, target creature gets +3/+1 and gains lifelink until the end of turn. Damage, and then it says in parentheses, damage dealt by the creature also causes its controller to gain that much life. So very necrotic feel to it. And the picture looks like a white gloved person, and they have removed one of their gloves to expose in the palm of their hand a multi-tooth maw in the palm of their hand, and then some of their fingers are elongated, almost tentacle-like, and then the skin itself looks almost like it's maybe rotted away or has some sort of ulcerations all throughout the hand that's exposing some of the underlying tissue. Well, we talked about the foxes and how something that they've eaten or they've been exposed to has changed them at a very fundamental level to become these like monstrosities, or at least these more aggressive monsters. This could be what is happening to some of the townsfolk, or maybe even the boss themselves, that as they're getting more and more exposed to this energy, they are starting to take on more of an otherworldly form. In D&D terms, it really reminds me of like something from the far realms.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's, that some, or, to use H.P. Lovecraft, something that should not be, right. It's something that's this person has done to themselves or had done to them that has started to open the door to this more cosmic or chaotic energy and look to it. It's very grotesque is the appropriate term for this, because it is very grotesque.
Yes. I also like the idea that just because of the white gloves, I get the sense that so the person that's affected may be trying to hide the affliction. Very classic zombie movie. You're bit, and you don't tell anybody, and then turn into a zombie, and then mess people up. So this could be maybe even part of like high society, like the nobles or the rich, wealthy people start to become secluded. Maybe they're getting their food; it's contaminated. Again, the ones that are most wealthy are probably having the best food. Maybe, I don't know, maybe imported food. Um, I don't know. I like the idea of someone having this issue, or multiple people, and trying to hide it, and again, making things worse when it's finally revealed.
Right. The best way to control a group of people is to control those who own everything. Right. So sure, if the Lord, or if the ruling class or something is being slowly poisoned by whatever this is, and whoever's behind this is controlling them through that. There's also I like the thought you had about them wearing the gloves to hide it, because there's a very, very much a who wears white gloves? I mean, come on.
Right.
You wear white gloves the first time you wear them and do anything with them, they're ruined. So this person has a very high sense of themselves, maybe even vain, because I'm going to wear my white gloves once, and then I'm probably going to throw them away because they're not pretty anymore. So this could be somebody who is considered very beautiful, or debonair, or something like that. And this monstrosity, this mutation, would be so jarring to see. You have this beautiful face, this beautiful body, and then you have this horrible affliction or this horrible mutation that you want to so desperately to hide, to the point where you may even do bad things to keep people quiet who find out.
So what if whoever our main bad guy is, who we've not really fully addressed yet, has poisoned the upper class of this wherever we're at, and is then treating them to get their money. Like basically that is how they're financing their operation, is they have given them these minor afflictions and are, again, quote unquote, curing the disease they created, or trying to, so that they keep going back to this person saying, oh, it's coming back, here's another X, it's coming back, here's another Y, so that they have the money they need to do the thing that they're doing. Which that takes our main bad guy out of the ruling class, most likely, because if they were the ruling class, they would already have the funds. So that would probably make them either like a traveler, almost like a snake oil salesman who comes into town, or maybe someone who's been around from like a very old family, but they lost their fortune. So you have the typical big house, but it's in ill repair because they haven't had funds or servants for a very long time.
Right. Some sort of, and and like you're saying, they're trying to treat this this affliction that they've brought about. Could be some sort of like a physician, or maybe even if we're talking about in a fantasy terms, maybe a fallen cleric of of a healing god that maybe has lost their power, and they're doing things trying to make it look like that they're still viable.
Right. So again, maybe they're the clergy. This in the town, there's a temple or a church, and they're the priest who supposedly has healing abilities because they're a priest of whatever the god of life or whatever is. But they don't have that power anymore. But they make it seem like they do by giving people afflictions that they then can cure. But eventually, maybe they start to mutate, because again, it's a mutation, and their cure stops working.
Right. Or when you said snake oil salesman, I kind of made me think of this too. This could be a subplot. It could be perhaps the priest or healing cleric of the town has lost their power for whatever reason. The god has left them. Maybe they did something bad that the god has cut off their power or whatnot, and so then they're desperate to to prove that they're still important, and they still have this power that they really don't. And so then this mysterious snake oil salesman comes in and says, hey, I kind of see that people are not as healthy as they should be around here. I can help you. The old devil on the shoulder, I can help you. Give the people this, let them do this, let them do that. So the priest is the person who's doing a lot of this stuff could be in the background. So that way, that when the player characters, they're starting to zero in on the priest, going, oh, okay, wait a minute, something isn't right here. This guy or this person is doing this to these people. Let's go get them. And they go get them because that's what player characters do, right? They come in and they stab them, and then they go, why did you do that?
Yeah.
So that could be another level to throw at it, or maybe even a some sort of not necessarily a midpoint, but maybe something where the player characters go through that level of the onion to the next step towards who's really behind all of this.
Sort of one last thing for me, I also like the idea that there's at least some benefit to what's happening at first. Again, very sort of classic, where I ingest this thing and it makes me more vital. It makes me feel younger, makes me stronger. And then it's only later that I start to see that it's actually also harming me. So you could have some people who are okay with this, they would rather have these mutations but still have that vitality, and then others who are trying to hide it and trying to cure it. But yeah, I do like the idea of a slight misdirection where it seems like there's pretty much an arrow pointed towards the clergy as at least someone who's involved, and it turns out they're just a pawn in a larger scheme. Or again, it could even be a completely unrelated scheme that just happens to be happening at the same time in the same place, that is almost like a side quest.
Right. So one other thing that you just said that, and it totally opened a different door for me, was and it harkens back to the foxes, right? You've got these more aggressive monsters that are starting to threaten the town. So not only do you have these like vainglorious, upper crust, uh, you know, ladies who want to maintain their beauty, or maybe feeling the effects of age, wanting to make themselves look better, but maybe you have the town guard or the captain of the watch or something like that looking at this stuff almost like performance enhancing drugs,
Hmm.
you know, like sports, like athletes would, so they're like, if I take this, it'll make me fight better, it'll make me be able to defend the town better. Well, yeah, very much the youth thought of like steroids. It's not, I don't have to worry about that right now.
Right.
What I need to worry about right now is defending this town. And then, then years later, they die at 30 because of using, horse steroids and stuff like that.
Right. And again, we have all these more aggressive, almost dire versions of animals that are starting to attack the town. So now's the time I need this more than any.
Right. Yeah. What's it going to matter 10 years from now if I'm dying from this, whatever blight it is, if I'm dead and being eaten by these creatures now?
Okay, so our next card here is Vampire Noble. It is a black card. It's a creature. It's a vampire, and there's no mechanics. The flavor text of "No emergency is so dire that it cannot be dealt with elegantly" by Olivia Volderin, and it is a female noble. She's richly appointed. She's lounging in like a chair. She's got some sort of scepter in her hand. One of those sort of masks that you would wear to like a masquerade party. Behind her, it looks like there might be some paintings or some other people that are just really far in the background. There's a servant over to the right. Looks like maybe drawing blood from a sycophant. So it's basically just some sort of like, typical vampire shenanigans. So again, first thought, probably this might be the bad guy, maybe, or a bad girl. Again, they're the ones that are behind everything. But part of me almost would rather make this a potential ally. Once again, this could be a misdirection where they just happen to be in the same place, happen to be in the same town. They're not affected. They're watching everything from their sort of dispassionate view. And they could be an ally to the players if the players don't go and just kill them once they realize they're a vampire. So I think it might be easier. It probably makes more sense to make them the bad guy. But there's a part of me that's like, could we do something different with it? What do you think?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, the vampire noble as the bad guy. It's cliche. So why would you, so let start thinking outside the box. Sure, absolutely. Maybe an ally. Something that initially, when I'm looking at the picture, sure, she looks very, very stylish, perhaps even demure in her, and she's almost like this flippant attitude. She's smiling at the camera, so to speak. Holding her little masquerade ball, little mask on a stick, and everything. But in her right hand, there's an axe.
Ah, yeah.
At first I thought it was a scepter too, and then I looked really closely and I'm like, no, that's an axe. So she's sitting there, she looks very cute, and I'm sweet, and holding an axe in her right hand. That's almost like a menacing, almost deceptively menacing pose that she's in. Like, I could kill you at any time that I want to. But what really struck me is what you're talking about before is in the background. And you see this person, this shadowy person, who is quite obviously drawing blood from someone, because you can see their arm is extended. It looks like they have a tourniquet or some sort of wrap around their arm, because it definitely separates, because there's a flesh tone to it, and then it's white, so it stands out as a flesh, from the flesh tone. So it looks like they've cinched off that arm, and they are doing something to that arm, drawing blood or administering something. Playing off of what we were talking about before, maybe vampire noble is kind of a misnomer. Maybe this is more of a parasitic noble, somebody who, what we were talking about before, who is a power player in the town, but is a slave to this other stuff, this other element that we're injecting into this story of, this rot or this some sort of performance enhancing or beautifying uh, element, and then maybe this shadowy person in the background is the real story.
Okay, could that be the actual bad guy who is a servant to this vampire noble who is oblivious? Or it could even be the supplier. Again, going back to the person who's messing with the clergy, this person is able to supply the vampire lord with what they need, whether it's truly a vampire like blood or it's just an agent, it's a substance, it's some sort of medicine that allows them to have their beauty and their power.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly could be. It reminds me so much of the story of Rasputin, right? This mystic person that's in the background, always in the background, and has such an influence over the ruling class, and is making a personal fortune off of them, off of their malady, things like that. Because if you know anything about that story, it was they were desperate to find some sort of treatment for hemophilia. And, so maybe drawing from a little bit of history, maybe this guy is some sort of a self-proclaimed mystic healer of some sort. And, and maybe they even brought him here to this town, thinking that this person could help them. But they want to keep that to themselves. They don't want everybody to know about it. So, and then this person goes to the clergy, says, "Hey, I noticed that you don't quite have as much power here as you used to. Maybe I can help you too, because I've been helping the noble family for a few years." And
Yeah.
so,
So, what if, again, I like the idea of this person being the shadowy figure who's behind everything. Again, it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason because it works and it's going to be fun.
right.
They are withdrawing blood from the vampire and some of maybe the vampire's thralls. Maybe that's that substance that is causing other creatures to become evil versions of themselves. So maybe even going back to the clergy, maybe the clergy doesn't know what's going on. So I have my homunculus. I give it a vial of blood. It goes into the church and it contaminates the wafers or the wine or the water, whatever. Everyone goes to services because it's tradition, and everyone leaves feeling great. And the cleric thinks they've done a great job. Like everyone keeps talking about how they're so invigorated by the services and that you must truly be touched by the power of the gods. And they start to feel like, wow, I'm really connected. I'm doing this great job. And then slowly over time, it starts to mutate and corrupt people in the town. The vampire noble, whether she knows about it or not, it doesn't really affect her. She doesn't care. She's above it. And that arrogance is what blinds her from the fact that it's this person that she's let into her home is actually behind everything. So that puts her as a potential ally if the PCs can expose this person and get her upset, or an enemy if they are too aggressive up front. And she's like, I don't care. You're annoying me. And now we have a battle out of it. So it could go either way. And I really like those imperfect solutions to problems.
Right. I like that thought process. I also like the idea that maybe this person who's doing this is a thrall or a servant of this vampire noble. But we always get this sense that just because they're a thrall or they're under the thumb of this more powerful creature doesn't mean that they're morons, and doesn't also mean that they have their own agendas. So yeah, this could be all the vampire noble could be this potential ally that's up there that, of course, player characters are going to see, oh, vampire. Well, there it is.
Yep.
That's all there is to it. And, maybe that's not it. Maybe the vampires is an unwilling ally to this person's plot. Yeah, like you said, drawing blood off of them, maybe mixing blood of a vampire with something else. And, so that way it's, if you kill the vampire, yeah, sure, maybe you might get rid of the supply or part of the supply chain, but you're not really getting at the root of the problem. So yeah, it could be a stepping stone towards getting rid. If you want to set it up like that, like there's a multiple mix of different creatures that this person's drawing from, then yes, upset it. You could do a whole thing where you're upsetting the supply chain as a series of events.
Right. I also like the idea is I've played enough D&D games to know that everybody or every party has one person that wants to be a vampire. And so you could have that situation of give the player an opportunity to become a vampire, or maybe even if they bring the noble onto their side, she can say, you know what, I can give you power. If you let me bite you, you will be more powerful. So that when you go fight this thing that's clearly, more powerful than you are, you'll have a shot. And again, it's like a dark bargain. Like, do you take the power of the vampire to tackle this other thing, but then now you're a vampire? So I don't know. I like the idea of that. Almost like it's not really political, but just so the role play area, the internal politics of what's worse, what's better,
Right.
what are our possibilities. So I could use.
Oh,
I see that card in a lot of different ways.
yeah, it certainly could be political, especially internally political within the group itself, because especially, and this happens a lot, and I usually stir this pot all the time. You have, like you said, one player character or one player who really wants to play dark, but then you've got another one or another, group of people who don't. They want to be the good guy. They want to be altruistic. They don't want to do the same old stuff. And giving the player who wants to go dark, giving him that opportunity builds this tension within the group. And then it's like, as long as it doesn't rip the group apart, then yeah, it could be, you could have these undertones and these subplots. And now it's like, okay, wait a minute. Now, Bill is playing a vampire, thrall of this lady that we don't trust. And now is he a spy for her now? Are they just going to, is he going to turn on us? That kind of stuff.
Right. Awesome. Very, very cool. Okay. Moving on.
All right. So Howpack Wolf, it looks like a red card. It says Howpack Wolf can't block unless you control another wolf or werewolf. It is a creature, wolf, and then the flavor text: wolves and werewolves join together for the common cause of the hunt. The picture itself, it has a very feral looking wolf prominently displayed in what is very obviously a charge of multiple like lupine creatures, because in the background you see almost like a hominid looking werewolf, very obviously werewolf, and then just like the leg of a much larger, perhaps werewolf closer to the displayed creature. So it looks like, yeah, it's like a charge of wolves and werewolves, which I mean makes sense. Howpack Wolf, right?
Yeah.
So to me, this is this ties into what we talked about before with the foxes. So maybe there's the local fauna are being mutated and changed by this process that's going on from eating rejected materials from this experiment, or this disease materials that they've put out of town because they don't want to, that want to be tainted by it, or maybe uncovered a cache of whatever this is. And then the picture itself kind of evokes this this trepidation or fear of being in front of this. You're seeing this coming over the hill, like a charge of cavalry, but they're wolves and werewolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this could definitely be the precursor to, or this could be some sort of a major battle of these monsters that make a final push towards town.
Yeah. We've already got vampires, so we brought in. So I kind of am hesitant to bring in werewolves too. I think it fits. It kind of makes sense in a way, but I almost think that may be too many ingredients in the pot. So I'm with you. I think we, rather than take this at text and say it's a werewolf, we just take the subtext and say there's a large attack of these already feral animals that we've established earlier that are corrupted. So again, this could be a great, like 3/4 of the way through the game where they're finally starting to put everything together and they kind of know who they're supposed to go after. And then there's this large attack from all these different animals that could either be because of the bad guy or just an unrelated. Now you've got a whole forest full of creatures, and it's just a big combat. It just allows the characters to have that moment where they get to kick ass and fight off these creatures. There's very classic protect the town scenarios. Like, do you let them work with the guard and create traps and create barriers? If character or players are into that, then you can give them the opportunity to be strategic and take a map of the town and lay out your defenses. Or it could just be all of that's in the background, but your player characters have to fight the alpha of the wolf or the pack or whatever. And it could just be a very simple combat that breaks up some of the investigatory aspects, or it could be a strategic part of the game. But yeah, I don't think I want to bring werewolves into.
Yeah. Something else that kind of occurred to me is this could also be a battle that happens based off of you've got this blight, which is starting in this like part of civilization and whatnot. This could honestly not even be a battle of tainted monsters or animals. These could be regular like animals being controlled or influenced by a druid who sees this happening and is like, this is all because civilization